I don't usually walk at night. I'm the kind of person who double-checks the locks, who keeps the bathroom light on if the hallway feels too long, who pauses a podcast if it gets too quiet outside. I'm not a total hermit, but after a couple of weird experiences in college, I learned to trust my gut and keep my after-dark errands to a minimum. So of course, the one night I broke my own rule is the night I can't stop thinking about. It wasn't anything dramatic that pushed me out the door. I'd worked late, ate something questionable from my freezer, and then realized I was out of ginger ale. My stomach was doing those little flip-flops that promise something worse if you ignore them, and the corner store, only a 10-minute walk, felt like the easiest solution. I looked at the time. 11:42 p.m. It was a Tuesday. The neighborhood is quiet, mostly families. People who go to bed early and complain in the community Facebook group about teenagers leaving scooters on the sidewalk. I told myself it was fine. 10 minutes there, 10 back. Quiet streets. I'd take the route with the most streetlights, throw on a hoodie, keep my keys in my fist the way my mom taught me, and be done with it. I even debated ordering a car, but decided I was being dramatic. I've done that walk 100 times in daylight. At night, it's just the same sidewalks in a different outfit. I grabbed my wallet and keys, jammed my phone into my pocket, and stepped into the hallway. Down the stairs, the building smelled like the mix of all our dinners and whoever's neighbor uses too much fabric softener. Outside, the air was cool in a way that felt good on the inside of my nose. A couple of moths buzzed around the porch light. I pulled my hood up out of habit. And like I said, I don't do this often. So I felt that little fizz of alertness you get when the night hasn't decided whether it's going to be friendly or not. My street is one of those where the city planted trees every 30 feet. In fall, they make this orange tunnel, and in summer, the branches tip forward toward each other like they're trying to touch hands. Last night, they just looked like arms. I walked by Mrs. Ortega's hydrangeas, the ones she babies like they're kittens, and the place with the broken garden gnome. You'd think the familiarity would help, and at first it did. I even texted my roommate, who's away this month, a stupid selfie, hood up, eyes wide, captioned, "Late night ginger ale run. Wish me luck." I got the little delivered checkmark and slid the phone back in my pocket. I was halfway down the block when I realized how quiet it was. Not just regular quiet. City at midnight quiet. No cars on my street. No speakers bleeding from somebody's open window. There was the sound of far-off traffic like someone whispering behind a door, and a dog barked 2 streets over. That was it. My shoes made that sticky sound on a patch of sap, and it was so loud that I winced. Before you think I'm setting up some supernatural thing, no. This isn't about a shadow that moved weird or a face in a window. This is about a person. I didn't know that then. I crossed at the 4-way, only rolling my ankle a little the way you do when the street surface is uneven, and headed toward the main road. The corner store sits opposite a bus stop, one of those glass shelters with the bench that always looks slightly wet. The streetlights on the main road are brighter, the kind that make the sky look pale even when there are no stars. That's when I saw him. He was across the street, at the bus stop, hoodie up, head down, hands in the front pocket like he was warming them. Nothing about that should have been weird. Lots of people stand like that. He was tall, maybe 6 feet or a bit more. Thin, but not stringy. I noticed because his jeans were a little loose, hanging, and the hoodie looked too big. It had a logo on the chest I didn't recognize. a circle with a line through it, like a band shirt or a skate brand I'm too old to know. The bus sign threw this rectangle of light that hit him from the side, which made his face mostly shadow. But I could see his mouth. It was slightly open, like he was breathing through it. There were 100 reasons to keep going, so I kept going. I didn't cross to his side. My path takes me along my own sidewalk, past the small park with the chalk drawings that never fully wash away. He was diagonally across from me, and if I stayed on my side, I'd end up at the corner store entrance that faces the intersection, which has a camera and a bell that dings when you open the door. That bell felt like safety, something about other people knowing I'm there. As I walked, my focus skittered around like a bug. The crown of the bus shelter was smeared with bird poop. The garbage can nearby had the lid askew. The map posted inside the shelter looked like it had been scratched over with a key, and I realized the man wasn't just standing. He was bouncing a little, a slow shift from one foot to the other, like his legs were restless or cold, or like he was counting seconds. I think that's what got me, the counting vibe. I told myself to stop making a big deal of it. I pulled my shoulders back to look taller. I did the little nod people do to acknowledge you're sharing space. He didn't nod back. He didn't even twitch. His hood shadowed enough that I couldn't see his eyes, but he tilted his head, and I felt that lock-on feeling. You know it. The one that says, you just became someone's project. I hit the corner and waited for the light. There were no cars, so I could have jaywalked, but I waited like a law-abiding idiot because the ritual of it, the button, the red hand, the beep, felt like control. The sound made this weak little chirp, and then I heard him. What time you got? It's the most classic, harmless opener you can imagine. People ask strangers for the time constantly, even now, with phones in our pockets. But it felt wrong. Not just out of place. Wrong. The way someone smiles without their eyes joining in. He didn't look up when he asked. That struck me. I waited a beat to see if a car would swing around the corner and give me another witness to share air with. Nothing, I said without turning my head. Almost midnight. I did not look down at my phone to check. I did not want to have anything in my hands besides my keys. I also didn't want to show him which pocket I kept my phone in. All of that went through me in an instant, like my brain was a row of falling dominoes. Midnight, he echoed. He stretched the word a little. I saw his mouth in the spill of light as he said it. Lips dry, a little cracked. Good time for things. That was when my stomach did a different kind of flip. I told myself, he's high, he's drunk, he's weird. Those are all possibilities that exist in the world. The light changed. The little white walking person lit up, and I stepped off the curb like it could grant me immunity. I didn't run. I don't run when someone might be watching, because you don't want to communicate that you're prey. I walked with a pace that said, I belong to myself, and there's somewhere I have to be. I can't explain it better than that. It was a posture, a performance I hoped would keep me safe. Hey, he said again, louder now. You walk fast. That's the moment I almost turned to say something snarky like, you should try it sometime. But I didn't. I kept walking. I felt stupidly exposed crossing the big open mouth of the intersection. Headlights could have swept over me and pinned me like a bug. I got to the curb on the corner store side and reached for the door. The bell dings when you open it. the kind of ding that's been dulled by 10 years of dinging. The store smelled like coffee and newspapers and fry oil. The guy behind the counter wears these white earbuds and has a goatee that looks like it gets more maintenance than the store does. He glanced up, gave a nod that said, "We are two people at midnight in a convenience store. I see you," and then went back to his phone. I grabbed the ginger ale, and because I needed something to do with my hands, I added saltines and a pack of gum. I stood there for a second pretending to consider the jerky. I told myself, chill. People stand near bus stops all the time. People ask for the time. Your body got dramatic because it's dark. The mind loves patterns and danger because it thinks that's how it keeps you alive. All those things people say to each other when they try to talk themselves down. It helped a little. I paid, made small talk about the weather because we're cliches, and stood in the doorway with my bag in one hand and my keys in the other, scanning the sidewalk like I was looking for my Uber. He wasn't at the bus stop anymore. Relief and a new unease traded places inside me. If he left, where did he go? I told myself to take the other route home, a slightly longer loop that cut behind the laundromat and added 2 blocks but would avoid that particular intersection. It also went past a bar that stays open late on weekends. It wasn't a weekend, but bars hatch people, and I wanted there to be more people even if they were strangers, and even if they were tipsy and loud. I stepped onto the sidewalk and turned right, away from the bus stop. I felt the weight of that decision in my feet. The laundromat sat like a bright box down the block. The neon sign flickered with the lazy speed of a blinking lizard. Open, open. A woman with purple hair and a denim jacket leaned against the window smoking. That made me feel stupidly safe, like I was under a bigger umbrella now. Behind me, there was the slightest scrape of shoe rubber on the pavement. If you don't walk at night much, you might think all footsteps sound the same. They don't. The pace, the cadence, the weight. Your brain becomes a little radar when you feel watched. This scrape was quick, like someone tapping the brake on a car. I told myself not to look, but I did. I turned my head like I was checking to see if a car was coming out of the alley. The street behind me looked empty. Tree shadows, a patch of greasy water near the curb, the bus shelter with its wet bench. No one. Maybe my ears made it up. Maybe a leaf. I kept walking. I passed the laundromat. The purple-haired woman dropped her cigarette and ground it out with her boot. We made eye contact. She gave me this quick chin-up that said, "Hey," the way women sometimes do to signal. "I see you. You're not alone." I almost stopped to pretend I needed change so I'd have a reason to stand under the bright light. But that felt awkward. My keys were still in my left hand, the long house key poking through my fingers like a movie knife, which is not actually helpful but feels like it is. I turned onto Pine. That street is different at night, softer, because the big trees there really do meet overhead. The street lights make little pools instead of a steady wash, so you go from bright to dim to bright. My eyes did that adjusting thing each time, pupils opening and closing. I walked faster, not running, just enough to feel my breath and remind myself my body was something I could control, unlike the shape of the night. Halfway down Pine, there's a little park. It's more of a triangle of grass with a bench and a trash can, but the city put a sign there that calls it a park and lists rules about off-leash dogs and glass bottles. The bench always holds something abandoned, a scarf, a newspaper, a single glove. Tonight it was a stuffed rabbit with one ear crushed under itself. It was cleaner than you'd expect. I would have thought it was a plant if not for the way the remaining ear curled around the bench slat like a hand. I glanced at it as I passed because I couldn't help it. And that's when there was a new sound. Humming. Very soft. Like someone humming under their breath. Not a tune you'd recognize. Just a chain of notes that didn't quite land in the right places. It was to my left, across the street, a figure in the gap between two trees, just outside the circle of light, like they'd learned where not to stand if they didn't want to be seen. Head down, hood up. I couldn't swear it was the same person from the bus stop. I couldn't swear it wasn't. The humming stopped when I stopped. My body made the decision for me. It kept moving. I didn't look again. I walked past the park and kept my eyes on the next bright pool of light, like it was a pressure plate that would unlock a door. My mouth was dry, and I could taste the tang of my own breath, that slightly metallic taste of adrenaline. I thought about calling someone. Who? My roommate wouldn't pick up. My parents would panic. 911? What would I say? A person is humming near a park, I told myself. Next light, call a car, even if it's just for 3 blocks. I'd apologize to the driver for a short fare and tip big. The next pool of light arrived, and I grabbed my phone. The screen lit my face. It felt like a target. I fumbled the app open and stared at the moving little car icon like it was a magic charm. I gave it my location. The estimate said 4 minutes. 4 minutes is either nothing or forever, depending on how the air feels. I hit confirm. Good time for things, the same voice said, closer now. I didn't hear footsteps. He was just there, not right next to me, but not far. Across the street, maybe 15 feet away. Same bobbing stance, same hood, same mouth. The word good sounded chewed. I said, because I felt like I had to say something, or else the night would swallow me. You all right, man? I tried to make it sound casual, almost bored. I didn't slow down. He chuckled. It wasn't a laugh. It was like he was practicing one. You walk fast, he said again, as if he'd been waiting to say it just like that. He started humming again, the thread of notes slant enough that it made my teeth feel weird. He didn't move toward me. He didn't move away. He just watched me pass. You might think this is the part where I did something brave or stupid. I didn't. I kept walking. I told myself 4 minutes. 3 now. Maybe less. The sound of the humming thinned out behind me, then stopped. I didn't look back. I made it to the next block, then the next. And then my corner was there with the mural of the sunflowers someone painted last summer. I turned onto my street and finally let myself exhale. I know you're not supposed to look, but when I was halfway down the block, I did. I turned and scanned the end of the street like a person checking for traffic again. No one there. The empty park triangle. The overhanging trees tearing the sky into shapes. My phone buzzed with a message from the rideshare app that the driver was arriving. I canceled. I could see my front steps. I felt silly paying to be driven 400 feet. I went inside. I locked the door. I locked it twice because I always lock it twice, then checked it again out of habit. I set the ginger ale on the counter, poured it over ice, and took a long drink that soothed and hurt in the same motion because of the bubbles. I ate 3 saltines like I was an extra in a black and white movie recovering from fainting, then put the box and the gum in the cabinet. I told myself I was being dramatic, and my body had made a story out of a night walk, because that's what bodies do to justify all the cortisol they make. I showered, which felt like stepping into a cave that was also a waterfall. I played a podcast at a slightly higher volume than usual, so the wet sounds wouldn't seem like they were coming from outside the bathroom. I left the curtain open a fraction so I could see the doorknob and would know if it turned. It didn't. I went to bed. I left a lamp on, and I slept. Here's the thing about the human brain. It makes the present feel airtight. You can look back and be amazed at what you ignored. You can tell the story later and make yourself sound like a fool. But at the time, your body lets you rest. I woke up to light and the faint smell of laundry detergent, and for a second I couldn't place why my chest felt like someone had been sitting in the middle of it all night. Then I remembered the humming. I lay there a minute. Morning made the night feel theatrical. I laughed at myself once, a little embarrassed sound with no audience. I grabbed my phone, scrubbed sleep from my face with the heel of my hand, and opened social media, because that's what I do, instead of breathing like a sane person. I scrolled past somebody's breakfast, past a post about a lost cat. Then I hit our neighborhood group. The top post was from someone named Danielle, who I don't know in real life, but see there all the time complaining about parking. The headline of her post made my blood go cold, in a way I have never, not once, experienced before. Police on Pine. Does anyone know what happened? There was a picture taken from down the block at an angle that let her include her artisan scone for scale or something, and in the background you could see it. The triangle park cordoned off with tape. Yellow tape that flapped a little even in the still photo. 2 police cruisers with their lights off, doors open. A cluster of people under the trees. A black bag near the bench. The stuffed rabbit was gone. I didn't breathe for maybe 5 whole seconds. When I did, I made a sound I will not try to describe because I don't want to hear it again in my head. I scrolled the comments, which were the usual mix of performative concern and speculation. Someone said, "They said it's a suspicious death." Someone else said, "I heard someone screaming late, around midnight." Another person said they walked their dog at 11:30 and saw nothing. Then there was a link to a local news site. I clicked. I'm going to tell you what it said, and I'm going to try very hard not to make it into a movie in my own words. Body found in small neighborhood park on Pine Street. Police investigating possible homicide. Residents asked to avoid the area while evidence is collected. That's it. Later there would be more. But right then there were 2 paragraphs and a photo of yellow tape that could have been anywhere. The timestamp said 7:12 a.m. The article said a passerby called it in a little after 6:30. It said the police were asking for anyone who had been in the area between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. to contact them. It asked for video, cameras, dash cams, doorbell, anything. I walked into my kitchen like I was inside a dream of my kitchen. The ginger ale glass was by the sink with 2 melted cubes floating like cloudy planets. My keys were on the counter exactly where I always put them, the long house key poking out from the ring like it was raising its hand to ask a question. I picked them up and put them down. I picked them up again. I thought about the humming. I thought about good time for things. I thought about a hood hiding a face and a mouth slightly open in the light. My first bad thought was selfish. It was, do I have to tell them I walked there last night? Do I have to say I didn't call anyone because I felt like I would sound crazy? that maybe I should have. Then another thought arrived and shoved the first one away so hard I almost stumbled, and it was, that could have been me. I don't mean that in a poetic way. I mean in the most literal way. I was in that space at around that time, and there was a person matching enough pieces of what my body had already labeled as dangerous to make me speed up. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was. If it was, then I crossed a path last night with someone who, right there, where I scanned for traffic like a liar to myself, had already decided what they were going to do, or had just done it. I called the non-emergency number because I didn't want to be that person who calls 911 and says, "I felt weird last night." They transferred me to someone else, and I told my story. I told it carefully. I tried not to make it sound like I'd watched too many shows. The woman on the phone had the kind of voice you'd want if you were having a panic attack at 2 a.m. Steady, patient without being sugary. She asked gently if I could hold. Then she came back and asked if I'd be willing to speak to a detective. I said yes, and felt the universe click into a different gear. A man called me just before 9. He introduced himself and asked if I could come down to the station. But then after I hesitated, not because I didn't want to. My body had gone into this weird half-floating state, but because I don't have a car and didn't want to sit in a rideshare talking about my night with a stranger. He said he could come to me. We agreed to meet in the lobby of my building. I brushed my teeth like that would make me a better witness. I put on a clean shirt. I thought about pulling the hood over my head, and then decided that would make me feel like a cartoon of someone under stress. I waited by the mailboxes. The smell of the building was back to normal. Dinners, detergent, somebody's too strong air freshener that smells like fake pine trees. He was younger than I expected. Late 30s, maybe. Squared shoulders. Hands that looked like they were used to holding a pen and a steering wheel more than a weapon. He shook my hand. He said my name like he'd practiced it. He asked if we could talk somewhere that wasn't the lobby, and I said we could go up to my apartment, then immediately wished I hadn't, because the idea of this new serious person in my space felt invasive. But it was fine. He stood by my kitchen counter like he didn't want to put his weight on anything, and I made coffee even though I didn't want any, and offered him some, even though I hoped he'd say no. He did say no. He took out a notebook the size of my palm and a pen the size of the notebook and said, "Start from the top." I told him. The ginger ale, the time, the bus stop, the voice, the humming, the phrases. I used my hands to show distance because words felt too slippery. He asked me to repeat exactly the words I remembered. I said, he asked me what time it was, and midnight. Good time for things, and you walk fast. When I said the last one, his eyelid tightened just a little. Not a flinch, not a twitch, a calculation. Did he ask for anything else? The detective said. No. Did he come into the store after you? I didn't see him do it. Did you see his face? Not really. Hood up. The light was from the side. I saw his mouth. Dry. Cracked. That's a weird detail. I don't know if it matters. It all matters until it doesn't, he said. And I thought that was either wise or something he said a lot. He asked about height, shoes, the logo on the hoodie, the humming, That last one he asked me to explain again, like I'd introduced a new character into the story, and he wanted to place them. Just humming, I said. Not a tune, or maybe a tune I don't know. Like the start of something that never quite starts. It made my teeth feel weird. I don't know why I'm saying that. Sorry. He asked about the time again. I said around midnight. He asked if I had the exact time on any app, because sometimes fitness trackers log steps and such. I said my phone would have the rideshare order I canceled. He asked if he could see it, and did that thing where he held his hands out slightly, so I'd know he wasn't going to snatch the phone from me. I pulled up the app. The request was time-stamped 12:03 a.m., the cancellation at 12:04. He wrote that down in tiny, neat print. He asked me to show him the route I took. We looked at my map like it was a board game. He traced it with the pencil eraser. The bus stop, the laundromat, the park, my corner. He asked me to mark where I think the person was standing when they spoke. I put little dots. He put larger X's over them. He took a photo of the screen because he said it was faster than asking me to email it and having the station spam filter it. Listen, he said, when we'd done all the tangible things. He looked tired, but not like he was over it. More like he was storing everything and knew he'd unpack it later. There's a chance the person you saw is unrelated. People stand at bus stops. People hum. People do weird things because they're alive at midnight. I don't want you to jump to conclusions that make you unable to sleep. There's also a chance it's relevant. Thank you for calling. He left me with a card that had his name and 2 numbers, and then he left. He did the polite cop thing of not turning his back fully until the door was shut. When the lock clicked, I leaned against it and slid down like a movie teenager who'd just been dumped. I sat on the floor. My kitchen cabinets stared at me with their blank white faces. The clock on the microwave said 9:48 a.m. I made the mistake of reading the comments again. Now there were rumors. A man walking his dog had seen a shape on the bench at 5 a.m. Someone claimed they heard a woman arguing with someone around midnight, but then when people asked what they heard exactly, they never replied again. Someone posted a photo, blurry, of tire tracks near the curb and circled them in red like those true crime accounts that find patterns in clouds. It wasn't helpful. It felt like watching strangers try on my fear and decide if it fit. Around noon, the news posted an update. They didn't name the victim. Too soon, no next of kin notified. But they said it was a woman in her late 20s. That landed like a hand slap. Late 20s. Me. My demographic. Like we were in the same club. They said the circumstances suggested foul play. That phrase tastes like cardboard. They asked again for anyone with information to come forward. For the rest of the day, the world tried to pretend it was normal. The mail came. The upstairs neighbor dragged a chair across their floor. The light through my blinds changed color. I realized in a distant way that I hadn't eaten and made a sandwich, and then didn't eat it because the act of chewing felt like I'd have to open my mouth wider than I could. I kept thinking about the rabbit on the bench being there, and then not being there, and what that meant in simple terms. Someone moved it. The kind of someone matters. At 3:17 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail because that's what I do when numbers are unknown, and immediately felt like a coward and played it. It was short. There was no greeting. There was a breath. And then, clearer than I wanted, You walk fast. No humming, just those words. My entire body went cold so fast my hands hurt. I replayed it to make sure I hadn't hallucinated. Same breath, same little chew to the U, same pause, like the person was smiling with their teeth touching when they said fast. I called the detective. He answered on the second ring. I didn't even have to say my name. He said hello in a way that sounded like he had 3 conversations happening around him and was keeping them all in order on shelves. I told him about the voicemail. He asked me to forward it and not to delete it. He asked if the number seemed local. It did. He asked if I had my number listed anywhere public with my address, like a delivery app order. Probably, I said. Probably 100 places. He asked me to stay put for now if I could. I said I could. The if I could was important, because it made me feel like I wasn't being told what to do. He called back 20 minutes later. He said the number looked like a prepaid phone, the kind you buy with cash, use briefly, and toss. He said not to answer if it called again. He said they might be able to pull location data if the phone called anyone else, or if the person kept it on long enough to ping a tower. These were all things I've heard in a dozen shows, and hearing them in my kitchen with my ugly fridge magnets made them absurd and horrifying at the same time. Did you tell anyone else exactly what he said? The detective asked. No, just you, and the non-emergency person, and now you. Good, he said, and then softer. Not that you should be quiet. Just, sometimes these guys repeat what they say because it's a power thing. He let that sit a beat. If he repeats it, it helps us. Not everything he says to you will help you. I tried to sleep that night and failed. Every sound was turned up to 11. The building settled like an old man clearing his throat. My radiator made that click-tick-tap sound. I lay on my back with my hands on my stomach and tried to name 5 things I could see, 4 I could touch, 3 I could hear, like the anxiety apps tell you. It helped until it didn't. Around 2 a.m., I got up and made tea with a tea bag so old it probably expired during a different presidency. I stood at the window and looked at my street. It looked like it always does. Which is to say, it looked like it could contain anything. I don't know if you want the next part, but it's part of the story. So I'm telling you. 2 days later, they released a still from a security camera. It wasn't great quality, but it was good enough for your stomach to find a new floor. It showed the bus shelter. It was time-stamped 11:58 p.m. You can see the edge of the store in the background, a slice of light. In the foreground, standing just outside the shelter, is a person in a hoodie with a circle logo on the chest. The hood is up, the head is down, the mouth is visible, open a little. You can't tell height from a still without context, but there's a pole next to the shelter, and people on Reddit, of course, did math to guess. 6'1" maybe, someone said. The news said the police were seeking this person for questioning. I didn't watch the video because there wasn't any. Just the still. I didn't need to. My body had already seen the video in real time. They also released in the most delicate way they could that the victim's family had been notified. Her name was Mara. She was 28. She had a smile in the photo they chose that made me angry. Not at her, at the world. Because it was one of those smiles that has the corners of the eyes involved. The kind that makes you like someone. It wasn't a party photo. It was a photo from a day that probably didn't feel important when it happened. I screamed into a towel. I don't know why a towel makes it feel contained. I texted my roommate a long paragraph in the morning explaining everything, and she called and cried with me and said the obvious thing. Please be careful. I said the obvious thing back. I am. It felt useless and necessary at the same time. I did the things you're supposed to do. I sent the police the rideshare timestamps. I pulled the tiny clip from my doorbell camera of me returning home at 12:06 a.m., looking like a person trying to look like a person who wasn't afraid. I wrote down everything again by hand in case memory is different in pen than in pixels. I explained in too much detail the exact way the humming sounded, how it wasn't quite in tune, how it wavered on the middle note, like the hummer wasn't satisfied and kept trying again. I described the logo on the hoodie and Googled circle with line through it hoodie brand, and found so many results that I wanted to throw my computer out the window. I walked to the corner store in daylight and bought another ginger ale I didn't want, and asked the guy with the goatee if he remembered me from that night. He said yeah, he thought so. Midnight-ish. He said a guy in a hoodie had come in after me and bought a pack of gum. No ID, cash, didn't speak. He hadn't thought anything about it because why would he? He apologized for not remembering more, even though I hadn't asked him to be a hero. He pointed up at the little black dome of a camera in the corner and said they'd already given the footage to the police. The voicemail haunted me. You walk fast. I changed my number. The detective knew I did because I told him, and he said it was a reasonable step, but also, sometimes these guys like to feel like they've left fingerprints on your life, and changing something is like polishing their mark until it shines. I didn't care. I wanted that voice to not have a line into my pocket. Here's the part where you expect me to say they caught him right away, that there was DNA under someone's fingernails, or a cigarette butt with a print, or a bracelet with his name on it, that he'd dropped like a fairy tale. That's not how it went. It took 3 weeks. In those 3 weeks, I relearned how to walk at night by not doing it. I Ubered everywhere after dark, even 2 blocks, and felt stupid and safe both. I sat with my back to walls and bars. I got a longer key. I joined my building's chat and said I was happy to walk with anyone who needed a buddy after 9. And 2 people took me up on it, and we walked to the grocery store together with our reusable bags and our long keys and our little jokes, and it felt like how you build an immune system. I also had a dream where I was the stuffed rabbit on the bench, watching the night breathe and waiting to be noticed. That one stuck. In week 2, they asked me to come down to look at a lineup. Not in person. The old TV lineups are less common now, apparently, and they do arrays on screens. 6 faces, all men of a certain build, all wearing neutral shirts, heads and shoulders only. They told me things that I already knew from shows. The person might not be in this lineup. You shouldn't guess to please us. It's okay to say no. I stared at those faces until my eyes felt like sand. None of them wore a hood with a mouth. None of them wore a hum. None of them wore a logo. I said, I don't know. The detective said, that's a good answer when it's true. In week 3, they arrested someone. Not because of me, because of a camera. A business 2 blocks over had footage of a man throwing something into a dumpster at 12:11 a.m. He was wearing a hoodie with a circle logo. They pulled the bag. Inside was a t-shirt and a pair of latex gloves and a receipt from a convenience store that had printed the time and the last 4 digits of a card used earlier that day. Not a fairy tale breadcrumb. A dumb one. The kind you forget you're leaving. They traced the card. They got a name. The name came with a file that said he'd been in trouble before, in smaller ways that had escalated. A neighbor said he hummed when he was nervous. The press didn't include that detail, but the detective told me later, and it made my skin crawl in a way that let me sleep better that night. They asked me to come in again. They showed me a photo, not a lineup, just a photo. They said it wasn't for identification. It was for closure. I don't know if that's standard, or if the detective did it because he'd seen me pick at my sleeve for an hour 2 weeks ago. The man in the photo looked like anyone. That's the awful part. He looked like a guy you'd sit next to on a bus and not remember 5 minutes later. Without the hood and the light and the night, he was aggressively ordinary. Mouth closed, eyes dull with the flash. The Circle logo looked like a band I'd heard of after all when I saw it in full. A local group I'd seen on flyers stapled to telephone poles. Circle with a line. Not a secret sign. Just a brand. He didn't go to trial right away, obviously. That's a long road. There were articles, and then there weren't. The neighborhood group calmed down. People returned to posting about trash pickup and lost keys. A woman started leaving small bunches of flowers on the Triangle Park bench on Fridays. I saw her once. She was efficient about it. In, set, out. Like if she moved fast, she could outrun her own emotion. I wanted to hug her. I didn't. I don't walk at midnight anymore. That's not a brave confession. It's just a new habit. I don't walk with both earbuds in. I pretend to take a phone call if someone makes me uncomfortable and say, loudly, "Yes, I'm half a block away. See you in a second." I stand under light if anyone makes my skin prickle, even if it makes me feel like a moth. I've stopped apologizing for those instincts. Survival isn't rude. Here's the part I haven't told anyone, because it sounds like I'm trying to make myself important in someone else's tragedy, and I hate that. 2 nights after they arrested him, I took out my trash late, because I'd forgotten to do it earlier, and the morning pickup is strict. I'd told myself, it's fine. It's only the alley behind the building. The lights are motion sensor and bright. You'll be out there 60 seconds. I carried the bag like a baby, cradled at my hip so it wouldn't rip, and pushed through the heavy door into the back lot. The motion light clicked on with a hard white slap and made the shadows jump. The dumpster lids were up because somebody doesn't like to close them all the way. I lifted one and threw the bag in, heard the soft thud as it landed on other soft thuds. The night was the kind of cool that makes you aware of your own breath. I turned to go back inside, and a voice said, "Not close, not far, not to me, not away from me. Good time for things." I froze. The hair on my arms, the back of my neck, all the cliché parts of the body that Rise did. I looked toward the sound. It wasn't him. It was a kid, truly a kid, maybe 14, with a skateboard under his arm and a phone flashlight pointed at the ground. He set it into his phone to whoever was on the other end. He was laughing. It was a joke, a dark one maybe, to his friend. The phrase had been in the air for days, on everyone's tongues in the way we metabolize fear by repeating pieces of it too much and too loud until the edges dull. He saw me see him, and his face changed to embarrassment. "Sorry," he said. He meant sorry for the phrase, but his tone came out like sorry for existing. I said, "Bad joke," because it was. He nodded and rolled away, the sound of the wheels on concrete like a zipper being pulled. I went inside and washed my hands twice and sat on my couch and stared at the wall until my eyes watered. I don't think the night is out to get us. I think the night is a place without extras. You feel your own outline sharper. Your choices sound louder. The corners you ignore in daylight raise their hands and say, "Remember me?" If I'm going to make meaning out of this, if I'm going to ask it for anything besides a new way to hold my keys, it's this. You are always both things. You are the person who walks home with ginger ale and the person who decides to wait for the crosswalk sign because it feels like a ritual. You are the person who laughs at yourself for being jumpy and the person who listens when your gut hits a low note. The scary part is that sometimes you're walking next to someone who is only one thing, and their thing is not compatible with you being alive. I didn't do anything heroic. I didn't save anyone. I didn't stop anything. I answered 3 questions correctly. I kept my distance. I didn't give him my attention for longer than I had to. And I put myself under light. Those answers did not help Mara. And that's the part that makes me clench my jaw at stoplights now. It is possible to do the right small things and still live in a world where someone else didn't get that chance. Sometimes when I'm making tea, I catch myself humming without meaning to. It's a tune I know, something from a commercial or a movie. I stop and point my face toward the sound like it's coming from the outside. Then I tell myself, that isn't his. He doesn't get the act of humming. He doesn't get to take something from the list of human behaviors and make it forever a knife. The bench at the Triangle Park has a new coat of paint now. The city did it quietly. The rabbit shows up sometimes, probably a different one each time because how many stuffed rabbits can a park host? And I try not to make it into a sign. The flowers keep appearing on Fridays. People sit there with coffee and read and check their phones and tie their shoes. The night goes on doing what the night does, letting us see less so we can feel more, and hoping we don't confuse that feeling with a story that ends in our absence. When I walk past the bus stop in daylight, the glass shows a faint smudge where a forehead might have leaned. I know it's not his forehead. I know 100 heads have rested there since. But I still don't stand under that rectangle of light after dark. I stand where the camera can see me, where the bell can ding, where the world has to acknowledge I am present. If I have advice, God, I hate being the person giving advice in a horror story, but here I am. It's this. Listen to the quiet. Not the kind that calms you, the kind that edits you out. If the night feels like it's shrinking around you, make yourself bigger with whatever you've got. Posture, light, a phone that pretends to be a friend waiting at the door, a route that adds 2 blocks if it means more people in it. You're not being dramatic, you're being alive. And if someone asks you the time and something inside you sits up like a dog hearing a key in the lock, give the vaguest answer you can. Keep moving. Let the bell ding. Let the light be your alibi. Do not give them more of your story than they already stole by existing near you. There are killers. Most people aren't one. You won't always know the difference at midnight. I saw him before the news did. That sentence sits in my mouth like a coin. I don't know if it buys me anything. It didn't the next morning. It doesn't today. But it keeps me honest about the shape of the night and the fact that sometimes the scariest thing is not a shadow with a face. It's a person who looks like nobody until they make you an almost.